thank you, everyone. It is 7 p.m. and I would like to say good evening and welcome to the No Fairfax Casino Coalition Leadership Webinar. My name is Lynn Mulston, and I serve as president of Reston Citizens Association. Our goal this evening is to give you the facts regarding a proposed casino in Fairfax County, including presentations by two of this country's leading experts on the topics of the societal impacts of gambling and the impacts on local economies. We're also going to answer your questions and provide you with an advocacy action toolkit that you can bring back to your own organization. First, before we get started, I want to introduce the members of the No Casino Coalition Steering Group. Linda Walsh from the McLean Citizens Association, Jennifer Falcone from Great Falls, Sally Horn from Greater Tysons, Chuck Anderson from the Vienna Town Council, Bill Comerford from Vienna, and Connie Hartke from Reston Citizens Association. Now, by way of background, Senator David Marsden took a big leap by proposing a bill that affects districts outside his own District 35 that includes Burke. Comstock holding companies who influenced the crafting of this bill has been linked to $1.2 million in campaign contributions to certain state senators and members of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. The local elected officials in the areas where Senator Marsden has proposed a casino are all in vocal opposition. Yes, Reston was the original intended site for a casino. However, thanks to the action by Reston Association, Senate Bill 675 received substitute language that excluded Reston and specifically targeted several sites in the Tysons Corner area. Given this turn of events, we reached out to our sister organizations in McLean, Great Falls, Tysons, and Vienna. Since February, we have been meeting weekly to plan and build our grassroots advocacy opposing a casino anywhere in Fairfax County. We don't know where Marsden might target next. We greatly appreciate your attendance tonight and hope you will support the No Casino movement. A casino is an unwelcome neighbor anywhere in Fairfax County. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have two powerful national experts in the field of predatory gambling with us here this evening. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Sally Horn to introduce our amazing speakers. Sally?
Thank you. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce Les Bernal, Executive Director of the Stop Predatory Gambling Foundation. The foundation is a national nonpartisan advocacy organization. It describes its mission as to reveal the truth behind gambling operators, to advocate for citizens and communities that have suffered harm, to prevent more victims, and to champion policy reforms that contain gambling rather than promote it. Les will speak to the many, many perverse effects of gambling on individuals and communities and explain why state-sanctioned gambling is predatory. Les, over to you.
Thank you. And good evening to all of you on this webinar. The title of my talk tonight is Love versus Greed, What You Need to Know About the Fight Against a Proposed Casino in Fairfax County. So I just want to take a minute and just briefly share some quick information about our organization, that our role nationally at Stop Predatory Gambling is we're really the convener, in many of these things across the country. We pull people together of many different political stripes, different organizations, different faith groups, all across the United States to engage in fighting predatory gambling. So that's one of the primary roles we fill, is being the convener, of really pulling diverse folks together. It's an amazing experience, and I encourage you to, once this fight's over in your area, to stay involved with us. Next big piece that we do is we educate youth and concerned citizens, and we create tools and fact sheets and so on, and we do all that with no charge. We give all these products away for free. We do multi-channel awareness campaigns through word of mouth, digital, et cetera, using traditional social media, lectures, et cetera, things like this. And we do all that at no charge. And the last thing that we do is we do targeted policy and advocacy, both at the federal and state level and local level. So that's what we're about, just so you have a little context for our organization. people always ask me, Les, why are you so passionate on this issue? Like, and for me, like I've dedicated the prime years of my life fighting predatory gambling. And obviously I have a short window. I'm only going to talk for about 12 minutes tonight, 12, 15 minutes. But I want to emphasize to you just very briefly what drives me on this. It kind of comes down to kind of two big concepts. I come from Massachusetts, home of the Boston Tea Party, and one of the most famous democratic principles of our nation is no taxation without representation, right? It's one of our core principles. You learn that like as a second grader in growing up. Today in our nation, whether it's Virginia, Maryland, California, you name the state, we have built a system of taxation by exploitation. And that's what at its core, that's what this casino project is about for your region. It's a system of taxation by exploiting our neighbors, exploiting our communities. And so it goes the antithesis of what we represent as a nation. And the last thing I'll say on a very personal level from a value standpoint, at its core, this is a fight against love versus greed. Okay, it really is. Like this is about if you love your community, you love your family, you love your neighbors, you love your country, you love your state. Like this is a business and a public policy that is about exploiting your neighbor. It's about taking advantage of your community. And it's driven, but not by a grassroots movement. There's no grassroots movement pounding for a casino in Fairfax County. This is being driven by powerful financial interests, driven by greed, okay, and politicians who lust for more political power, okay? But it's driven by greed. So that's what this fight is. It's about. It's not about gambling. What people do privately is something totally different. We're debating here and we're fighting against is a government program that's about exploiting your neighbor and exploiting your community. So very briefly, I always love to start out with like, what is predatory gambling? I need to start with what predatory gambling is not. Okay, so for those who are watching this who are kind of agnostic to this issue, this is what we're not fighting against. Okay, so this is not about the Friday night poker game, buying a square in the Super Bowl office pool, your March Madness bracket. If you're Catholic, many Catholic churches have Catholic bingo games, or if you golf, you have a friendly wager on the golf course. Yes, those are all forms of gambling. But those are social forms of gambling, okay? There's a social element to this. What we're talking about here tonight, okay, is predatory gambling, okay? And what predatory gambling is, all right, and I put this visual up, I think it explains it as well as anything that you'll see visually, is it's more than just an addictive product, okay? What it is, we call this whole thing the big con. And what the big con is when you mix a known dangerous and addictive product with a fraudulent and manipulative financial scheme. All right, so opioids, tobacco, known dangerous addictive products that we do everything in society to restrict them. We restrict advertising for them. State attorney generals bring litigation against them for predatory practices. And then down below, you see two of the more infamous, financial scandals that were huge public ripoffs from the last 20 years. The guy that started FTX, and then the infamous Bernie Madoff. Okay, both huge ripoffs. Ripoff artists financially. Harmed millions of people, took millions of dollars, okay? That's what at this core, that's what predatory gambling is. It's a con, okay? And what we mean by that is this. Let me move my next slide here. Hold on. Okay, and this is and I wrote this, I try not to write too much in text, so you guys are more watching the images, but I put this on text so you all can take this with you and really kind of internalize it. Is predatory gambling is when powerful corporate gambling interests partner with state governments to use commercialized gambling, okay, to exploit and defraud citizens and their communities. When gambling is being run as a business, okay, and that's the operative word here. That's what makes it different than social gambling. But when it's being run as a business, it creates a predatory and adversarial relationship between the gambling operator and the gambler. There's not another business in the country, in the world, where they have an adversarial and predatory relationship between the operator or the business owner and its customer. Okay, you go to a coffee shop and get some donuts and get some coffee. Like, they're not trying to destroy you. Okay, a gambling operator is trying to take you down. Okay, they only win if you lose. And so today it's become a cliche in American culture, this concept of the house always wins, right? We always joke about, oh, the house, you talk about casinos or the lottery, we say, the house always wins, and we just all kind of chuckle it off. Like, but what does that really mean? The house always wins. So this is the best visual that I've ever come across, and that simplifies what it means when the house always wins. And this is taken by arguably one of the most influential books, I think the most influential book written about gambling technology in the history of this country. It's written called Addiction by Design by Natasha Schull, who was at MIT and now she's at NYU, an incredible scholar on this issue, so on 60 Minutes and so on. She had this image in her book, and I always pull it up because I think it just summarizes how this industry works. So when they say the house always wins, what that really means is it's a con. The longer you participate in it, it's a mathematical guarantee that you're going to end up losing all your money. So so there you see the graph up top. You start out with a whole bunch of money, and then over time you end up losing all of it. It's inevitable. It's a mathematical guarantee. Okay, and then down below you see the slot machines and high speed games are where the industry makes their money. So you start with, the more spins you make, yes, you win a little bit as you go, but over the long term, it's a mathematical guarantee that you're going to lose everything. Okay, and not just lose what you have, you're going to go into serious debt if you keep using this product. Okay, that's what they mean. The house always wins. It's a con. Okay, and it's a highly addictive con. So we call this concept, why this matters so much in Fairfax County and across our nation is it's not just about having a casino in your neighborhood, okay, or in your local community. So yes, that's a major issue and it's something you should be fighting tooth and nail against, but predatory gambling as a whole, and we include state lotteries as part of that, now the latest forms of online gambling, online sports gambling that states are pushing, as well as brick and mortar casinos. We call this America's most neglected major problem. And there's four reasons for it, and this goes to the heart of why you should oppose the casino coming into Fairfax County. Number one is this is an industry that's based upon exploiting and manipulating kids, okay? Many of the gambling games that are being brought into the public square today, they have cartoon-like figures on them, okay? It's being normalized. We're normalizing a known dangerous addictive product that causes serious financial harm for a whole new generation of young people. Okay, so whether it's state lotteries but particularly casinos and the casino industry, they're coming after our kids, our grandkids, your nieces and nephews. Okay, that's what they're coming after in this. So this is about the future of your family and of your community's kids. This is what this is about. So this is why more than anything else it matters so much. The second reason why this is America's most neglected problem is this is a government program that perpetuates poverty. And it causes financial ruin on people. So just to put this in big picture, over the next 5 years, the American people are going to lose more than $1 trillion of personal wealth to government-sanctioned gambling. So if you add up brick and mortar casinos, state lotteries, online gambling, it exceeds more than $1 trillion of personal wealth over the next 5 years. Okay, that equates. To break that down by a minute, that's more than $300,000 every minute that people are losing. Okay, like unbelievable jaw-dropping sums of wealth. And regardless of what your political stripes are, there isn't a policy reform that comes within 1,000 miles that if we just cut the amount of gambling losses the American people are suffering by 50% over the next 5 years, that's $500 billion you put back into the daily lives of the American people. Why would leaders of Fairfax County or any legislator representing that region get behind a proposal that's going to encourage their constituents to lose enormous sums of money in the tens of thousands annually? Okay, it's the antithesis of what government represents. All right, this is a public policy that hurts the little guy. Okay, and thirdly, most of you already know this about gambling, but it's important to emphasize this because it's been so normalized, is predatory gambling, the kind that's being proposed for Fairfax County. This is a business that inflicts life-changing addictions on people, okay? When we say it's a known, dangerous, and addictive product, like that's not me saying this. That's the science telling us this. The American Psychiatric Association, which many of you are familiar with, every 10 years or so, they put out what's called the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. Its most recent version labeled gambling addiction as severe an addiction as opioids, cocaine, and heroin. Okay, like that's and the DSM is like the mental health Bible. Hospitals use it, your doctor's offices use it, insurance companies use it. They label this addiction, this product, as addictive as opioids, cocaine, and heroin. Yet we market it relentlessly, exempt from truth and advertising laws, and then we're building them in highly populated areas. It's one thing to hop on a plane to Las Vegas to do it. You can go there once a year, perhaps. Now you're talking about putting Las Vegas right on Main Street in your communities. Like, that's what we're talking about. People aren't going like once a year anymore. The business model for these casinos are 5 to 6 times a week. All right. And then lastly, and you wouldn't think this is how would this issue relate to predatory gambling, and particularly brick and mortar casinos, is that the introduction and the widespread nature now of predatory gambling, it abets human sex trafficking, which is a huge issue in our country. All right. And the reason for that is any kind of illicit business in your area, they love the introduction of brick and mortar casinos because it gives them a venue to launder their profits. So they walk in with dirty cash, they run it through the slot machines a few times, and they cash out, they go to the cage, they get tickets to say, this was gambling winnings. And so now they're more than happy to pay taxes on those gambling winnings because they can put that dirty money, that it came in as dirty money, they can put it into real estate, stock market, you name it, legitimate investments. Okay, so they've laundered all that cash. And governments, state governments are encouraging these illicit businesses by allowing these guys an opportunity to wash their cash. Okay, it's unbelievable the role that casinos play in money laundering. And again, and so that abets human sex trafficking, and that's why New York City Now, the local chapter of Now in New York City, came out decisively within the last month or so, opposing the introduction of casinos in New York City because of its role that the industry plays in human sex trafficking. Okay, so this matters. Whether you gamble or not, like you're going to suffer for this. Your community is going to suffer for this. Okay, and so some of your proponents are going to stand up in your hair. Hey, we got this responsible gambling concept. Most people go, they don't have a problem. Addiction is such a minor thing. They're going to try to minimize the problem. Okay. So the whole concept of responsible gambling is a sham. And so one of the arguments I give you, the talking points I'll share with you to push back on, is this is one of my favorite things to talk about, is in the alcohol industry, there's a multi-million-dollar business on non-alcoholic beer, non-alcoholic wine and spirits and so on. So you would think in the gambling business, right, there'd be a gambling operator that, whose primary focus would be to market themselves as, hey, come with us, come gamble with us. We're the responsible gambling operator, right? Just like you see for non-alcoholic drinks, okay? Is there a responsible gambling operator out there? There isn't a single one in the United States or in the world. And the reason for that is because the business model is not financially viable. The business model for this industry is based on addiction. Between up to 60% of casino profits, brick and mortar casino revenues, come in from citizens who've been turned into addicts. Okay, that's the business model. The casual player, I always ask all these problem gambling council leaders, who promote this responsible gambling sham, say, tell me how much money do casinos make from citizens who practice so-called responsible gambling? Well, pointing back to Natasha Schull, whose book again, Addiction by Design, she had a study in there that is damning, and it showed that roughly 75% of the people walking into a casino which practice so-called responsible gambling behavior, they made up 4% of revenues. Okay, 4%. They're irrelevant to the business model. This is about taking you and trying to cultivating you to become an addict, incentivizing you with free wagers, free alcohol, you name it. And we're doing that as an extension of a government program. Okay. Another big argument you're going to hear in Fairfax County is, hey, casinos, we're going to have jobs, they're going to produce jobs in your area. Well, first of all, the idea that you're one of the most economically successful areas in the country, the idea that any leadership, your political leadership would say, we're going to turn to casinos is it's the most pathetic example of leadership I can think of anywhere. You're a model for the rest of the country. The idea that a place like your region would turn to casinos is just absurd. But that being aside, they're still going to argue about the jobs argument. Well, here's something right out of Pennsylvania. You can urge the public officials who are promoting this to look it right up. It's damning. There's a program called self-exclusion, which again is part of the sham, right? They put the onus on you, the addicted gambler, to have to exclude yourself, if you're addicted to gambling. But even still, so the states have these registries of self-excluded gamblers. Right now, there's more than 20,000 citizens in the state of Pennsylvania who have gone on the self-exclusion list saying, hey, listen, ban me from these places. They've ruined my life, prevent me from going in here. Okay. that number of 20,000 people, more than 20,000 people, it's 35% higher than the amount of people who work at the state's casinos, okay? Full-time and part-time jobs. You know, think about that. It's absurd. Like, these are people who have self-excluded. And what makes that an exclamation point on that fact is 10% of, only 10% of the people who experience problems with predatory gambling ever come forward for help. So roughly 90% of the people who are addicted to gambling never put themselves on a self-exclusion list. So this literally is like the tip of the iceberg, okay? So like you literally are creating thousands and thousands and thousands of more addicts in your region than there's people who work at these places. Like, we don't do that for any other business. Like, if this was any other business, state attorney generals would shut them down immediately. Okay, but because state governments are trying to partner with this, they survive. Like, it's an unbelievable hypocrisy. Okay. And the last thing I kind of winding down here is one of my favorite facts of all, and it kind of shows what the big con is, what this is really about. Is there's a picture of Meryl Streep winning an Oscar, you know, because the gambling industry, these guys are going to stand up. Your public officials who are carrying the water for this industry, they just stand up and say, hey, this is just like any other entertainment option in our region, right? It's like going out to dinner, going out to the movies, going to a sporting event, you know, having a glass of wine, etc. And so I always tell people, you know, Robert Mondavi, when he was alive, he drank the wine he made. Meryl Streep, she watches the movies she makes. The local restaurant chef in Fairfax County, he eats the food he serves. Predatory gambling is the only product or service in the world where the people that own it and promote it don't use it. Okay, we call it the Hypocrite Hall of Fame. Okay, so on our website, we have a list of all these public officials who, you know, say, predatory gambling, it's great for Fairfax County, it's great for your family, but you know what? I don't gamble myself. You know, I invest in stocks, I own second homes, I have retirement funds, but this is great for you. You know, it's the only business. That's the ultimate example of the big con in action. All right. So for us, let's talk about, for those of you who, like, as this movement grows, like, this is what's happening. Like, we as a movement, we're building a new category of philanthropy on this issue. So like, if you're someone who's passionate on this, down the road, when you get through this fight, I encourage you to become a recurring donor for Stop Predatory Gambling. We're working to build an endowment on this, but another big way that big change is going to happen on predatory gambling in America is through legal settlements, like similar to what we saw with opioids and the tobacco industry. Those are coming, they're building, but that's down the road. That's what the future looks like for us. And then the last thing I'd say on this is it's been an honor to be here. And now you're going to get a chance to hear from Jonathan Kreutz, who I think is like the national scholar on the economic impacts of gambling. So thank you for the invitation to be with you tonight.
Thank you so much, Les. You've given us all so much to think about. Just a fabulous presentation, and we so appreciate it. As you said, our next speaker is Dr. Jonathan Kreutz. He's the Emeritus Professor of the Boise State University College of Business and Economics and Chairman of the National Board for the Stop Predatory Gambling Foundation. Over the next several minutes, Jonathan will share data on how casinos have affected local economies. He has graciously agreed also to stay with us to answer questions on behalf of both himself and our earlier speaker, Les Bernal, who had a prior commitment but made the time for us to take time to speak with us. So now over to Dr. Jonathan Kreutz. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally, and thank you, Les, and thank you all who are on this call today. My research area is on the economic impact of casinos, and I'll talk about that today. It's going to go pretty rapidly because there's a lot to cover. But everything that I have to say, you can find in my dissertation, which is the link is at the bottom of your screen here on this slide and on the last slide of my presentation. I've also put references on each slide for things that I'm talking about, so it's easy for you to access. I'm assuming that Sally and the organizers will make those available for people that are on this call. And I look forward to answering questions after this. But I'm to move right along. I'm going to talk about, do casinos create economic development? And I'll start with two maps. One is the United States in 1988. Pretty much casinos were confined to Las Vegas and Atlantic City. That's what America looked like for casinos. And today we have 1,000 casinos across the country. I'm not big on special effects, but here we go. Before, after, before, after. It's a huge growth, a huge expansion. And as you know, it's coming to Fairfax County. So why has that happened? Why has that expansion happened? In a nutshell, it's because of economic and jobs claims. The gambling consultants who are hired by the gambling interests to promote things, they say essentially economic development and jobs. Here's a quote from the American Gaming Association. Gaming is an engine of growth that powers economic development and job creation everywhere it operates. That sounds great, doesn't it? We have reports from reputable organizations. Arthur Andersen, well, they used to be reputable until they went bankrupt under Enron. KPMG, Innovation Group, local economists pushing this message. They're well-funded voices. They make a reasonable point that policymakers want to believe. And that point is, hey, I could put this thing in your community and I'll hire 1,000 people and we'll I love this term generate. We'll generate $200 million in revenue. And doesn't that sound great? It sounds good to me. I'm sure it sounds good to you. It certainly sounds good to policymakers. But let's check in with the Philadelphia Federal Reserve. 22 years after the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act that opened up America to casinos, essentially, they said many, if not most communities, wouldn't entertain the idea of legalized casino gambling if it weren't for the anticipated economic benefits. All right, so they're saying the same thing. It's economic claims, but then they go on to say, which emphasizes the importance of trying to establish whether these benefits exist. So here we've had 22 years of studies paid for by gambling interests saying, oh yeah, jobs, oh yeah, economic development. And the Philadelphia Federal Reserve comes along and says, oh, we need to establish whether this is actually true or not. So why are they skeptical? For some good reasons. I mean, just off the top, it's consultants are paid to support the claims of the people who are paying them. And we've seen it in the tobacco industry. We've seen it in the opioid industry. We see it with groups that are promoting casinos for areas. They're going to share information that support their side. There's a reason to take those kinds of consultant studies with a grain of salt. I'm sure there are some floating around in Fairfax County. Here's what they're missing. First of all, they're completely minimizing, if not ignoring entirely, the social costs. We have a study out of Canada that says 3/4 of slot machine revenue is coming from people who can't control what they're doing. That's a huge problem, and you will never find it. And I've read a lot of these reports. You will never find it mentioned in any of those reports. Likewise, Earl Grinnell's in 2004 did a cost-benefit analysis, really the best one that's been done to date, looking at all of the costs that these addicts are bringing into society for broken families, for embezzlement, for bankruptcy, and money laundering. These costs, and this is his book published by the Cambridge University Press, say the costs outweigh the benefits by more than 3 times. You won't find that information in any of the gambling promotional reports. But the other big thing that they miss is this notion of a substitution effect. And my study, which I'll talk about in a second, really reinforces the notion that this is what's happening with most casinos. And again, when you saw that map with 1,000 casinos on it, when it was just Las Vegas and Atlantic City, people are going there, leaving their money and coming home. That's economic development for Las Vegas. Atlantic City now is sort of not anymore because so many casinos are nearby. Pretty much, though, what my study shows is this notion that a casino is much more like a restaurant than a factory. When you put a restaurant into Fairfax County, you're going to hire people, you're going to bring some revenue, but it's not going to change the economic picture for Fairfax County. The people that are going there are local, they're losing money, or they're spending money at the restaurant that they would otherwise spend at another restaurant or nearby, but it's not adding to the local economy. And that's what most casinos today look like. And that's what a casino in Fairfax County is going to look like, although they'll dress it up and call it a resort as if anybody's going to come from a distance on a regular basis to gamble there. Their target is the heart of your communities. They want the people there to have a convenient place to lose money. It's not like a factory that's creating something and bringing money in from outside that expands the economy. Finally, you should be skeptical of economic claims in part because this is a field where independent research is discouraged. I know of researchers who have been enticed, given offers of employment sort of beyond what they could expect just to leave the field. I know of research that have been that have taken phone calls from casino executives yelling at them about the results of their studies. It's not a comfortable field to do research in, and so there aren't a lot of people doing research in it. In addition to that, the industry itself puts funds toward responsible gaming, and Les, I think, did a nice job of explaining why that whole part of the gambling world is a sham. They don't put any money into gambling impact research. They don't want people studying the things that we're talking about here today. So there's not a lot of good data out there, but there is some data, and I'll share it with you briefly and then share my data, and then I'll wrap up. There are two surveys of the literature, one in 2011, one in 2020. 500 studies identified. 19 of them, they said, these are really good studies. And I went through all of those studies. They didn't capture all the studies out there, but they did things on retail sales, income, property values. I'm moving fast, and you'll know why at the end of this slide. They have many limitations. Most of them are old, most of them are small scale, most have flaws, and the biggest flaw was they include a place like Las Vegas in the analysis as if Las Vegas is a typical thing, which it's not. Las Vegas is a huge part of gambling, and it disrupts the data of some of the studies because of its inclusion. Many had study-specific issues, but none measure how casinos have impacted local economic development across the United States. So I did. The question was, if casinos bring economic development, then we should expect to see the casino economies growing at a faster rate in retail sales and employment than the non-casino economies, right? That's what economic development is. So if they're saying, hey, we're going to bring economic development to Fairfax County, then over time, we should see things growing faster there than counties that don't bring in a casino. And we can test this, and I did. We found information from the US Census Bureau and compared retail sales and employment growth between casino and non-casino economies across 39 states. And when we get to questions, you can ask me why the other 11 are left out. I'm happy to talk about that, but it's a pretty broad geographic sample from 2002 to 2017, a 15-year period, very broad time period, comparing casino and non-casino areas. Just for a glimpse, here's what I found. And we have no time, and you have no interest in reading this kind of a table. So I'll just go to the conclusions, but this kind of table is in my dissertation, which again is linked in my first and last slide. Here's the results. Number one, casinos do not boost retail sales. There was no evidence of that. Areas with casinos had similar retail sales growth as areas without. But this idea, hey, we're going to expand the economy, it's not in the data. Second, casinos hurt retail sales in a recession. So during the 2007 to 2012 period, the Great Recession, the casino areas had 2 to 3 times lower retail sales growth than the non-casino areas. So in a nutshell, casinos aren't going to add anything in normal times, but during hard times, they make the hard times worse. Finally, on employment, the casino areas had lower average employment growth rate than non-casino areas over this time period. What does that mean? They certainly were hiring people, but just hiring people isn't expanding employment, because the people, when they're hiring people, they're doing it with money that's being pulled out of the economy that otherwise would hire even more people than the casinos are hiring. So it's actually hurting overall employment growth in an area. So those are the results of my research. And again, this is the most comprehensive study that's been done on this particular question. And it came out in 2022. It has yet to be refuted. I was asked to share a little bit on tax revenue impacts. I haven't done this research, but 3 others have. So I'll just share their results. Doug Walker says casino gambling probably does not have a positive effect on state revenues. Lucy Dedayan with the Rockefeller Institute, her report is called Short-Term Relief, Long-Term Disappointment. And then right here in Virginia, the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond says, we find that despite tax revenues being a major motivator for state legalization of casinos, there's little evidence that they boost state taxes. And why would that be? It's because when they cannibalize the economy, they're also cannibalizing the taxes associated with that part of the economy. And on balance, there's not that much overall benefit coming from what looks like a lot of money that casinos are generating really aren't. So I'll be happy to answer questions when that time comes, but I'll turn it back over to you, Sally.
So you're turning it back over to me, Jonathan. Thank you. I want to thank Les and Jonathan for their presentations. We really appreciate you sharing this important fact-based reporting, and thank you both for the important work, excuse me, that you're doing in this arena. Now, our plan in Fairfax County for moving forward is centered around two major goals. First, we want to get our Board of Supervisors to know. To date, only 3 supervisors have publicly stated their opposition. Supervisor Alcorn in the Hunter Mill District, Supervisor Bierman in Drainsville, and Supervisor Smith in the Sully District. We need to show our supervisors that there is overwhelming opposition to a casino. From now through December, we are asking you to do the following. Help us get 10,000 signatures on the No Fairfax Casino petition. Sign it and then advertise the petition to your members through email and social media. The link will be made available to you. It's on our website. Become an opposition partner. Have your organization write a letter to the Board of Supervisors and send us a copy to post on our website. If you have already written a letter, please forward it to us. We will total up how many people our collective organizations represent and report that. Meet with your supervisor and ask where they stand. Support upcoming No Fairfax Casino Coalition Community Forum media event that's coming up on Sunday, October 27th. Help us fill that room. Sign up to staff a booth at a community fall festival throughout the county. Note that the Pro Casino Group is at all of these events. Recruit other organizations. This should include women's and men's groups, business organizations, homeowners and civic groups, those that advocate for children and mental health programs, and other groups that form the safety net for our communities. A No Fairfax Casino Leadership Toolkit will be sent to you after this webinar that provides links to the No Casino Coalition website, the petition, suggested wording for email communications, social media posts that you can cut and paste, sign-up links to staff booths, and a link to donate. Signs and other promotional materials and buses, should we need them to advocate in Richmond, are expensive. The second goal is to influence the Virginia General Assembly. We need to leverage Virginia legislators, contact your representatives as a community. Finally, help us contact legislators outside of Northern Virginia. If this bill is reintroduced, then we'll be scheduling trips to Richmond to meet with legislators and undertaking letter writing campaigns. In fact, we will ask you to sign and then encourage your members to participate in our email advocacy action center that automatically sends an email to your senator, district representative, supervisor, and of course, a CC to Chairman McKay. If the bill ends up making it to our Fairfax County ballots as a referendum, then we'll need help conducting educational forums, door knocking, and communications and social media campaigns. I'd like to turn it over to Linda Walsh to go over some specific needs and to explain how we will manage the Q&A period. Linda?
Thank you, Lynn. Our united opposition is key to opposing the casino. Senator Marsden has stated that he will bring this forward unless our supervisors say no. So Lynn has given you a long list of things you can do, but right now what we want you to key in on is the petition signing and promote. This petition actually lets us report out in the supervisor districts, the numbers by supervisor district. Contact your supervisors. As noted, we have 3 no's and we need at least 3 more. and promote the No Casino Coalition October 27th forum. That is a media event, and we want to get the attention of everybody that lives in Fairfax County. As noted, the toolkit will be sent to you after this meeting, so there'll be instructions on how to do all these things, and a lot of links and suggested language to make your job easier. Additionally, we're seeking volunteers with specific expertise, and that is attorneys with experience with land use and gaming regulation, as well as legislative advocate, as we put our package together when we go to Richmond. So if you can do those, send us an email at no casino coalition at gmail, and that too will be included in the toolkit. So now we're going to go to the Q&A period. I just want to go over just a few rules on that. Okay. Please raise your virtual hand. The webinar manager, Jennifer, will recognize you, and then you'll be allowed to unmute yourself. All others will be muted. Please keep your questions short, less than a minute, so that we can get to as many questions as possible. And feel free to tell us who you would like to address your question, any of the panelists. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer to recognize. If you'd like to.
So if I could just step in, we do have, this is Lynn, we do have one Q&A, a question in the Q&A, and it looks like it's more of a comment from Terry Hatami. I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. And Terry writes, we need to be proactive with the other side's reactions, such as stating by Marsden that casinos bring in over 3,400 jobs to the Tysons area. Also, some will state that we are getting too emotional with love and greed, as it is just an entertainment avenue, or stating that it brings lots of money for state and schools. Also, they keep saying, well, the Virginians are going across the river to MGM. I don't know that Terry has posed a question for us, but I think that this is an interesting observation. This is certainly something that we have discussed, and we have seen this as well, Terry. And I don't know if Linda, if you want to add anything, or perhaps Sally might want to add something.
Yeah, let me just handle that real quickly.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the conversation tonight of what Jonathan has provided for us. And you know, obviously we have to keep on pushing back. You know, Maryland has lots of casinos and gambling establishments. They have a terrible fiscal problem over there. It doesn't solve the problem. It's not going to serve ours. And what the Richmond report related was that as we condense the number of, or we increase the number of gambling establishments, there's only so much money, right? So they don't produce the projected money. So thank you, Terry, for that. So
I do see that Gabriel, we do have a hand raised from Gabriel Goldberg. Gabriel, do you want to unmute and ask your question? Yeah.
I believe I already did. I think I can do this in less than a minute. I've never been a gambler. I've always thought that gambling was a tax on ignorance or stupidity. The will of the citizens, by not allowing the Board of Supervisors to directly say, no, go away, we don't want casinos, or to allow the Board of Supervisors to allow the citizens to say, no, go away, we don't want casinos. All Marsden is doing is beginning a process of multi-step authorizations, every step of which can end the process.
I think what I'm hearing you say is that that you're observing that there are opportunities along the way for the Board of Supervisors to tell Senator Marsden that we do not want them to waste our taxpayer dollars bringing this bill back to the floor.
Well,
Um,
exactly. It just seems that the process should be closer to the people rather than by whatever means preventing this from coming to the multiple levels of authorization that would be required. First, it would have to go through the board, and they would have to say, yes, let's do a referendum. And then, same as the meals tax was proposed several years ago and declined by the citizens. And I think that would be a more compelling rejection than preventing the process of examination first by the board and then by citizens.
okay, thank you very much, Gabriel. We appreciate your observation. I
Can
see that we
can
do.
I say just one thing
Mhm.
about that? I think, what we saw is Marsden brought it up and this is very, so there were 5 locations identified by the state to have casinos, and all those were very depressed areas, people that did need the jobs. So that was how the legislation was proposed. But unfortunately, the gambling industry has gotten involved. And of course, putting it in Fairfax County would be more lucrative, maybe, than other areas in the county. And it's something that has upset the normal process of this bill. Marsden requested it. Our Fairfax County supervisors never have requested it. So just to be clear about that. And in the meantime, unfortunately, there's a lot of campaign monies that are floating around to the various lawmakers, throughout our supervisors, unfortunately, as well as our state legislator. So yes, you're right. I think it's something that should be asked for, but this hasn't been asked for by Fairfax County. So thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
I would
We
like-
have 2 questions from Donna Jacobson that I'd like to get to, and then I see that Chuck Anderson has his hand raised. Donna Jacobson writes in the Q&A, politicians say that we need revenue for everything they want to pass. They have said it about data centers and now about casinos. Since the data center zoning ordinance amendment passed the Board of Supervisors, why do we need casinos?
So let me just explain the difference in the revenues that are driven by these 2 organizations. So when we have anything that is the casinos, there's a 30% tax on the net wagers. So how many companies can pay that kind of money out as taxes, right? First of all. And second of all, only a small percentage of that tax comes back to Fairfax County. So right now, Fairfax County only gets about 21 cents on a dollar of money that's sent to Richmond by us. So the casino is a bad deal. If you look at data centers, where we generate funds is from real estate taxes, but also from property taxes. And the equipment that's inside of our data centers are very expensive. Thus, they generate quite a lot of revenue that goes directly to Fairfax County coffers. They do not pass and be reduced by Richmond. So just so you make a great point there. So thank you.
Thank you, Linda. And Don had followed up with, in regards to a referendum, the only residents who should vote are those in the district in which the casino will be, not countywide. And I think, Donna, we would agree with you on that. So thank you so much for your questions and your observation. So I see that Chuck Anderson, your hand is still up.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Basically, I'd like to respond to the previous gentleman's question. One of the big differences is Fairfax County has not asked for this, and there's a precedent in terms of land use and local control, whereby basically, if you start down this road where a delegate or a senator from an entirely different district can ask that something be done in another district, then we just think this is bad precedent from basically local land use control authority. So that's where I'd start. But the real reason that our strategy is to try to kill this bill before we get to the referendum stage and before we get to the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors is basically because if this legislation passes, then millions and millions of dollars will be spent trying to convince people that it's a good thing. And we, the grassroots coalition, who have sound economic arguments and sound social cost arguments, we're going to have to match that, and it's going to require a massive effort. So our strategy is to try to nip it at the bud as much as possible, and that's why we're going down this road. It's going to be far, far more expensive, and our chances could be not nearly as good if we have to wait and make this decision down the future.
Thank you, Chuck. We really appreciate that. Excellent point. I see John Pinkman, you have your hand raised.
Hi, this is actually a question for Dr. Krutz. What would be the advisability or the practicality of taking a specific location in particular Tyson's Corner? There's likely 2 locations, but close enough that I think that economic study might be identical, and actually do what perform a study on all the things that both experts were talking about tonight, and sort of an economic impact study using very specific and localized data.
No, I think that would be great. If someone would step up and do that in an honest way, that might be enlightening. I think we have enough information to show that if you put a casino in, for instance, the National Gambling Impact Study Commission report said within 15 miles of the casino, gambling addiction rates will be double. So draw a circle around 15 miles and you'll have a sense of what that impact is. The work that I did, I was able to look at micropolitan areas and metropolitan areas, large population areas and smaller population areas. I thought that might be interesting, that there might be some differences. There really weren't a lot of differences. In both cases, there wasn't a boost in retail sales. In both cases, there was depression in retail sales during the recessionary period. And in both cases, the employment was reduced. So you've got that data already, and it applies equally to Tyson Corner, to other parts of Fairfax, or to other parts of the United States.
What are the mechanics of that? Who would do it? Would you do that? And what, not having any experience in this field myself, what would be the cost of something like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Some jurisdictions have done local studies using economists from local universities, and some of those studies have been good. I would point to Ernie Goss's study for the Omaha Chamber of Commerce, which did include social costs, which did include substitution effects. But I can point you to half a dozen other studies that were really not done very well. As far as the cost, I don't know, you could spend several thousand to tens of thousands of dollars. There are organizations that are willing to do those kinds of studies, and the ones that have a reputation for working in the gambling industry, by and large, if they're continuing to work in the industry, it's because they're giving the kind of results that the people paying for the studies want, which are generally the gambling interests. So then, you know, it's a little suspect what you're getting. I think I did a nice job of outlining what the concerns are that you'd want to watch for in a study like that if someone does do it.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Great question. And Jonathan, thank you for the response and insight. We're going to move on to Charles Ng. Charles, you have the question?
Well, an observation and a question, I guess. First of all, I agree with the gentleman who said the sooner we kill this, the better. The longer this lingers, I think the more vulnerable we become. Secondly, I might suggest the the coalition put together a Q&A that everybody can work from. I think a lot of these questions I've heard before, and the answers are relatively the same, but I think particularly if we have to go down to Richmond or visit other supervisors, that might be of assistance to people in their communities. Third, I guess, is there any merit to getting, rather than getting groups, not rather than, but if we have to get groups to go to Richmond, that's one thing, but can't we do that to the various and arrange appointments with the various supervisors here as well? I know I've already met on behalf of our HOA with Supervisor Bierman. Now I know that's preaching to the choir at this point, but if we got a group from a large segment of Fairfax County and visited each supervisor, would that be of assistance? And maybe we have to ask our supporters on the supervisory board, like Mr. Bierman and others, if that's a good idea. I'm not, this is just off the top of my head, candidly.
So I think that's exactly what we're asking people to do at this point. Charles, I happen to know him. He lives right in Tyson's Corner. We've had many a chat. So first of all, I want to thank you for the Q&A suggestion. I think that's a good thing for our toolkit. That might not come in a couple days, but we'll get that out to you guys. But the second thing is that's the purpose of this meeting. So we have people from all over the county that's signed up for the meeting. Many of them are umbrella organizations, so they have lots of civic or other organizations underneath them. So that's what we need now. That's our ask right now. We'll be working. We've identified some people, and we'll be working with them to make sure that we address these issues with the supervisor. So thank you. Whoops.
Sorry, we have, oh, sorry. Next, we have Glenn Harris. Your hand is up. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. I am the president of South Village Community Association. Is my video on? I can't. Seems to be.
We just see a blue screen.
Yeah.
Glenn. Sorry.
Well, let's just go with the blue screen because I don't want to, and it's not the blue screen of death, so that's a good thing. Glenn Harris, I am president of the South Village Community Association. We represent 260 homes located near Wolf Trap, so we're about 2 miles away from the casino. And we undertook a poll, and the response was overwhelmingly opposed to the casino. My comments are directed at the earlier gentleman's comments suggesting that somehow it would be undemocratic to try to kill the casino proposal now, and that was suggesting that we should just allow it to go to the voters. So echoing what Linda Walsh and Chuck Anderson said, I think that most people on this Zoom meeting recognize why the establishment of a casino in this part of Fairfax County, or Fairfax County in general, would be extremely disadvantageous to the county for a number of the reasons that these great experts have elucidated. But, if you think about it, and I think Chuck made this point, but I just want to reinforce it, if you allow this to go to a resolution, then the amount of money that is at issue for the developers and the potential casino operators, they are going to spend millions of dollars on television advertising to try to persuade people that this is a good thing for them and a good thing for the county. We are not going to be able to raise that kind of money to be able to oppose or offer counter advertising. And so you're going to have a very one-sided discussion. And as a result of that, I think you really run a tremendous risk of people being misinformed and voting not based on objectively presented arguments on both sides, but being swayed by 30-second or 60-second advertisements, which is really going to put us at an incredible disadvantage. So, to the extent you think that casinos are a bad idea, then allowing it to go to a resolution, I think would be extremely dangerous. So I just wanted to respond to those comments. And then the other observation I wanted to make is that it seems to me Linda had indicated that we need 3 more supervisors to oppose the casino proposal. And I wonder if any effort has been made or should be made to try to identify who are the 3 additional supervisors on the board that we believe would be most likely to oppose the casino. And if we could get some kind of understanding as to who those might be, to target the resources on those supervisors and citizens in those supervisory districts, because it would be more effective perhaps to really focus on those getting those 3 supervisor votes rather than perhaps trying to get an additional 6 to so those are my observations, and thank you for everyone who's put this together, Linda and Lynn and the others and the experts. I think this has been a really terrific webinar, so thank you very much.
Well, Glenn, I want to thank you for joining us, and you made some excellent points. We do have another question from Donna Jacobson. She writes, in regards to tax revenue, have existing casinos been able to convince local governments to give them tax breaks? Have there been any studies showing forecasted tax revenue versus actual tax revenue received? And I think I'm going to ask Jonathan, is this something that you might be able to help us answer?
Yeah, there's all kinds of things have happened out there. I will tell you, there's, like with anything, there's different levels of honesty among gambling promoters. In some places they've made promises and they've kept their promises. In other places they haven't even come close. There's a casino up in Massachusetts where they promised, I don't know, some pie in the sky number of jobs. They never got anywhere close, and when they were called on it, I think right now that casino is up for sale so that they can leave without being held accountable for not meeting what they said they were going to meet. So that happens. In terms of the taxes, I mean, the most recent thing that I heard, they built a casino in Omaha and they used tax increment financing for it, which it just boggles my mind. And not to get in the weeds, but tax increment financing is saying we're going to use some of the revenue that this new thing is going to generate to pay off some of the costs of doing this new thing. But when the whole point of doing the new thing is to generate tax revenue, then not paying the tax revenue, I mean, it's absurd. And yet it was approved because there wasn't, nobody really knew that it was happening until after it was done. So there are a lot of different things that go on, and certainly a lot of promises made with casinos and examples of them not coming through with what they promised. Some places, I mean, Atlantic City has all of a sudden got a lot of competition, and it's hurt. I mean, the people aren't going there anymore, and so promises that they made they can't keep, and who's going to hold them accountable at that point?
Thank you, Jonathan. We appreciate it. Chuck Anderson has his hand up again. Chuck, you're muted.
Okay, am I on?
You're on.
Yeah, I just want to address the tax issue just briefly. A few weeks ago, some of us met with Delegate Vivian Watts, and frankly, I was blown away because I had never met anybody who had such a deep and expansive knowledge of fiscal and tax policy as Delegate Watts. And her initial reaction to the idea that somehow Fairfax County's fiscal problems could be solved by a casino was just a laugh, because she said the amount of revenue that's being projected from that casino in terms of tax revenue was minuscule in proportion to the potential tax gap that we have to fund our schools and districts. And the other thing is, as an economist by day and as a town council person by night, I always know that money is fungible. And so when people go out and claim that this is going to be money for schools, well, guess what? When the Federal Reserve of St. Louis looked at this, what they found was that communities that basically bought into that, they just lowered the other tax revenues going to schools. So the net tax amounts didn't change. So it's not a panacea. And in addition, for Fairfax County and Tysons in particular, what you hear is that, well, we've got a real problem with an overhang in commercial real estate in Tysons County. We have a lot of unleased office space, and this is somehow going to solve that problem. There's no connect there, people. That problem is so entirely different. And if anything, a casino would probably exacerbate that problem because of the fact that it would drive businesses who don't want to be co-located with a casino away. One of the things that people don't often realize is that a number of office spaces in Tysons counties are security firms. And guess what? National security firms don't really want to be next to a casino. So one of the things we really have to focus on in this discussion is how does it affect Tysons specifically? And that is unknown territory. I wish we had the money to do that kind of a study that takes into account the substitution effects, the social costs, and the peculiar economic growth model that Tysons has, which among other things is to basically move to mixed use and family friendly. Now, can you imagine the family friendly model with a casino next to it? I'm not so sure. So I just wanted to make those comments, and that's it.
Thank you. So we're going to sort of wrap it up here. So I wanted to make one remark, and that was Terry Clower, who works for George Mason University, who I did try to convince to do a study for us, said that hosting a casino was desperation, was a sign of desperation. And I don't think that Fairfax County is there. But along with that, what I would like to tell you is, although we are all volunteers, we could still use your contributions. So those people who have talked about studies and the such, I hope that you will go to our website and click and donate just a little bit of money to help us out. We most importantly want to thank you for attending. And we do believe our grassroots will prevail, right? And the important thing for right now that we work together is we saw the needle move from Reston to Tysons, but we know that Comstock and the developers are out there doing, meetings all throughout the area. So I think what we want to do is we want to fight it together as a united front. So we want to kill the bill. So you will be sent that toolkit. If you have any additional questions, please send them via email to our No Casino Coalition website. Our No Casino Gmail account. And again, we want to thank you for being with us this evening, and we'll promote other events as we go along. Thank you.